Oh, the glory, the absolute glory, James. Welcome to Champions. 10 years on with myself, Pete Selby, and I'm delighted that James Turrell is here talking all things Leicester City 10 years ago. Now, what we're going to be doing here on For Fox's Sake is we're going to be talking all things Leicester 10 years ago. As we go through this current season, we'll be talking this time 10 years ago when we won the league. Guess what? We won the league in 2015, 2016. First of all, for new people who are listening to the podcast or watching the podcast live, maybe on X, maybe on YouTube, on Facebook, however you're watching, then welcome to For Fox's Sake. We've been going for 12 years now, and we're into the wide world of video as well. You can listen if you want on Spotify and on Apple. And on The Big Show with Pete Selby, we talk all things Leicester. On The Preview with Rob Hayes, guess what? We preview the next game. We talk all things FPL as well, if you're a fancy Premier League player. That's on the FPL show with Matt Elliott, who finished 186th out of 11 million. And on Champions, we were talking all things what happened this time 10 years ago. So, James, welcome to the first episode of Champions. Great to have you on, because I know before the season you were really wanting to be on this show and talk all things 10 years ago. Now, we're going to be starting in August and September. We're also going to be showing a fair few of the goals as well and seeing how the team evolved, who we signed at the start of the season. It's a trip down memory lane, and we want to hear your views as well. So get in contact on the chats. Make sure that you get in contact. If you're watching live on YouTube, etc., or on X, do comment as we go through the show. But we want to hear from your experiences, because when we're looking back, yeah, we can dissect the team and we can look at the goals and the star players and how the team evolved through the season and which players worked out in the transfer window and which didn't, and have a great big laugh about it. But also, I think this is more about, James, where you were, where I was, where the listener, where the viewer were. Where were we? Were we at the game? Where were we watching? And I think as we go through the season, they will become very, very important towards the back end of the season. But for now, James, I just want to know about you, because you're very new to For Fox's Sake, and you've been absolutely fantastic. We've had a lot of feedback about you, because the one thing with being on podcasts, you can, and also, and I don't want to try and blow smoke up myself and Rob, but two people who are very well used to talking, very well used to doing that for jobs as commentators, whether it's at Leicester City for a decade as a commentator or elsewhere in the wider world of broadcasting. And some people come on the podcast and basically will just kind of agree with everything you say. And over the years, over the decades we've been doing this show, For Fox's Sake, we've basically never planned anything. It's always been a very natural conversation. And you've come on and you've been exactly yourself, and you had your viewpoints. You've been very kind of negative about Leicester, etc., with brilliant points of view as well about the current side. But I want to know, what were you doing in August of 2015, and how were you associated with the club? Were you just a straightforward fan? And yeah, just give a little bit of background about the James Turrell of 2015.
Well, I'd had a season ticket from 2001 to 0506, I think. Basically until I went over the age of 14, I think it was, because then the season ticket prices jumped massively. In August 2015, so I was like a super fan from childhood. First game I ever went to was Leicester. And I actually remember turning to my stepdad, who took me, saying, "Why is there no commentary?" Because I'd only ever watched football on the telly. I had no conception that there wouldn't be commentary in the ground. August 2015, I just finished university. I was living in Bath. I didn't live in Leicester for 15 years. I only moved back at the start of this year. So I was just about to start my year between finishing my undergrad and starting my first master's. And I was working at the Edinburgh Woolen Mill. I don't know if we have an Edinburgh Woolen Mill in Leicester.
And you were wearing your Leicester shirt at the time, yeah?
Yes. So if you ever need cashmere scarves at a cheap price, the Woolen Mill is the place to go.
But what were your hopes for that season? Because you got to remember, on the back of what happened in 2014-15, which was just a remarkable season, Leicester...
Yeah, 7 wins in the last 9 games, wasn't it?
it was extraordinary, and I've always said over the years, one of the most underrated players in Leicester's essentially history has probably been Robert Huth, signed on loan, and he was one of a few players who we signed in the summer. And obviously, we had the change in manager, and I don't think we're going to really kind of go into that. I mean, we can go into it a bit more detail maybe on the big show, but obviously we know what happened with Pearson, we know what happened with the video, and we know why they left, etc., why that team kind of left. That's maybe a conversation for another day. But if you don't know, that it's well documented. But Claudio Ranieri comes in. You know, Claudio Ranieri, really? Question mark. Gary Lineker,
which I didn't agree with at the time. I was really happy when we got Claudio.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We're not after timing, are we, James?
No, because I just remember, it's Claudio Ranieri. He's got to Champions League semi-finals. He's come to Leicester. I actually remember putting a post on Facebook saying something. I tried to find it earlier, but I deleted it. Saying something like, after Claudio Ranieri's lived in Naples, Rome, and Athens, he's going to have a big shock when he walks down Beaumont Leys High Street or something like that.
I mean, I was a little bit more optimistic, I think, than some people when Claudio came in, purely because of the build-up. You remember the shots of the team out in Austria, etc., on their bikes, and Claudio just watching games, and the reports came through about Claudio not making any changes, and just him and a couple of people. There was no one else. There was no real change to anything, and it was all systems go. And behind the scenes, it was all systems go on who was going to be signed. And of course, one of the most crucial players to sign was N'Golo Kante, who joined eventually. And the numerous stories at the time were people walking down the corridor, Steve Walsh, etc., and loads of the backroom staff basically saying, you know, N'Golo Kante for 2 weeks, until eventually Claudio almost had to sign it off, and eventually the move was done, and he was brought in.
Well, Ranieri tells the story that Steve Walsh just used to walk past him and go, Kante, Kante, Kante. He didn't used to say anything else apart from that.
Yeah, and he came in alongside Shinji Okazaki, Gökhan Inler, Johan Belalawan, Robert Huth on a permanent deal, Christian Fuchs, and also, on a free transfer. And what a free transfer! Nathan Dyer as a loan as well, and then players returning to the squad included, say, Schlupp De Laet as well, and a few other players. He went on loan obviously later on in the season, but it was overall a side put together with players who had been there since the championship days. A few of the older heads are gone, the likes of Paul Konchesky, etc., and Hammond, and a few of the other players went. So overall, although Dean Hammond, he went at the end of the season, on my list, I've got the end of the season as well as the beginning. So you've essentially got a squad of players who were in the championship, had done well, won the championship, been in the Premier League, took a long time to get going, never really out of games, and then all of a sudden a bit of defensive solidity at the back, and we went on that run to start the season in the Premier League, to survive in the Premier League. And at the start of the season, we're going to start with the first game. We're playing at home, we're playing Sunderland, okay? Where am I? We know where you were, okay? So I was working down at Leicester. I was a commentator for Leicester City, commentating for the blind, doing the audio description commentary. But I was not there. I was not there on the first day of the season. First day of the season was a remarkable season, or remarkable week for sport in general, because it was the same week as Stuart Broad took 8 for 15 on the first day of the Ashes at Trent Bridge.
Oh, was it?
That would have been the Thursday or the Wednesday, but normally it was the Thursday back then, when the first day of the cricket. I had tickets for that. I was not there. I was meant to be working at the King Power on the Saturday for the first game of the season, and I was not there because I was in Ibiza at my friend's wedding.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, exactly. I wasn't there. I had to give away the tickets for the Ashes, and Stuart Broad goes and does that. It's one of the most remarkable mornings and days of play of cricket. Well, yeah, I mean, I had a great time in Ibiza, but when you're there on the beach and someone comes over and says England are 123 for 3, and I'm like, oh, is it a little bit late? I'm pretty sure. Oh, yeah, by the way, they bowled out Australia for next to nothing, and Stuart Broad took 8 for 15. I mean, when you had tickets in your hand, oh, dear. And then It gets to the Saturday, and I watch the scores come in from the bar, and of course, it's the Soccer Saturday, etc. And the goals do come in, and they come in style. Let's relive here on, for fuck's sake, Champions 10 years on. What happened on the first day of the season? Well, there we go. I mean, what a fantastic day. I mean, obviously another goal went in as well for Sunderland, but the best thing about these opening couple of months, and especially that first game, James, it just encapsulates absolutely everything that Leicester were that season, weren't they? Because, or at the start of the season, because you've got a team of Schmeichel, you got De Laet right back, centre halves, Huth Morgan, Schlupp at left back. Okay, so the two fullbacks, which of course are going to be very crucial come the end of this month or the end of the next 2 months when the change happened to solidify the defence. Albrighton, King, Drinkwater, and Mahrez. So not too much difference there. Of course, King you replace with Kante, but of course that happened throughout the course of the season, and we'll come on to Kante once he starts to come on. And then Okazaki and Vardy up front. A couple of goals for Mahrez, Vardy you saw score, and Albrighton. But also, crucially, we conceded goals as well. Now, first of all, throughout the entire season, we all know that we didn't change the team very much, but it really does show what Leicester were about in those first few months. Balls being put into the box, not afraid to get the ball in early, not afraid, of course, to defend as well by having a solid back two in the middle and letting teams get down the sides and be able to put balls in the middle. That would be a feature of Leicester as we go through the season. But also, and you saw there, especially that last goal, Jeff Schlupp getting forward. Now, Christian Fuchs got forward eventually and did in games, and of course passed the ball forward, no look pass for Vardy's 11 it's heaven goal. But Schlupp was bombing forward and Richard De Laet was bombing forward at times, and that made Leicester very attacking, very creative, and scored plenty of goals, but also left chances down the wings at the back for teams to get at Leicester and not only get down the sides, which was fine, but also then crucially be able to cut in because there was no fullback already there. And you've seen the goals. Vardy, Mahrez, a brilliant start. Lots of that was to come. But yeah, it showed the flaws in Leicester as well.
Yeah, and I think it's probably fair to say that we probably wouldn't have won the league without the fullback change, because it completely changed the dynamic of the defence and it actually allowed Mahrez a lot more freedom and while still being solid. We're a bit like Kevin Keegan's Newcastle for the first couple of months, just like not really much defence, bombing forward. But well, it's interesting actually in that Mahrez took the penalty. I wonder when it became standard for Vardy to take the penalty. Maybe that was after the 11 goals in a row. I mean, I don't really have many memories of this game in particular. I do remember feeling really positive at the start of the season. And actually, during the previous season, I didn't think we were going to go down. I think I just had that blind, ridiculous faith that we would stay up. But yeah, it's interesting watching that back, particularly Albrighton's got 2 assists and a goal. I mean, there's arguments that he must be in at least the top 5 best free transfers in the history of English football, maybe.
I mean, just an amazing player and an amazing career, not only in that season, but obviously as we go forward. And as we go forward, we then move to the first away game. And the first away game, so Leicester 4-2 against Sunderland, fantastic. What a great start. Scoring goals, conceding goals doesn't matter because, of course, the aim is still to survive in the Premier League. And then we go to West Ham. And all of a sudden, a younger Pete Selby turns up, and I am at Upton Park. So I'm in the away end at Upton Park with my dad. It was the last, or one of the last seasons at Upton Park. I can't remember if it was the last season at Upton Park. It may well have. I'm not quite sure on that, but I seem to remember it being the last season at Upton Park, or it was scheduled to. And the away end at Upton Park was absolutely dreadful. It depends how close you were to the centre. So behind the goal, and we were just slightly to one side of the goal because there wasn't an incredible amount of Leicester fans compared to, say, if it was going to be Tottenham, for example, or someone. Maybe you had from half the goal all the way to the edge of the pitch, but we were just towards one post, so not too many. But the problem is, because the ground was so skew-if, we were about 3/4 of the way along the stand, and yet we were looking straight down the touchline. So there was a good quarter of Leicester fans who were looking basically at the stand. They had to look all the way over to their right to actually see the pitch. It was quite remarkable. And we
Like
went down
being in the
on
double decker at Filbert Street.
in a very similar way. If you were in SK1 in the double decker, yeah, you'd be looking kind of over or towards the east stand. And if you were in the double decker in that section, you'd be looking over the east stand. And quite often, if you saw the double decker upstairs, I had a season ticket in SK2, so I never saw the upstairs bit. But you saw there was actually quite a few seats at the sides, never really sold because no one really
I've sat in one of those seats. You couldn't see. You were literally behind a massive bit of concrete.
You couldn't see anything. It was the most ridiculous stand. But anyway, we went because obviously I was involved with the DSA at Leicester, etc. I said to my dad, I said, right, got tickets for West Ham. Okay, legitimately got tickets. But we can go on the supporters coach. So anyway, we go on we go to the King Power and we get on the bus. Now, my old man, he has no idea that this is a DSA bus. So this bus is absolutely space age. It's brand new, and it's got all like you walk towards the bus, and all of a sudden the steps they come down to the floor. And my dad's like, "This is great. This is some stuff." So we get on the bus, and he walks on. He goes, "Wow, this is nice and wide. The aisle and the seats are massive and everything." He's like, "This is all right." Anyway, we get on the bus. And we go down and we stop off at a service station. You want to say Watford Gap. It could have been any. I don't remember. Watford Gap for the purpose of the story. We stop off at Watford Gap. Anyway, we go in, grab something to drink, whatever. And you come back out and there's a line of supporters coaches. And you look at them all and they're all nice, but they're not like ours. And he's like, which one's ours? And we walk along. And then we stood and there's a queue of people to get on. And of course, people getting on the coach there's people in wheelchairs, but of course these wheelchairs, the big wheelchairs, etc., and all sorts of support people and help, etc. And you can just see the penny drop as we're in this queue to get on. And we're like, no, we'll wait, of course, and we're going to just walk up the steps, etc. And he just looks at me. He goes, "Are we on a disabled supporters coach?" I says, "Yes, we are. Just be quiet." I says, "But we're on legitimately. We're here. We've got the tickets. They were offered me. It's fine." And he says, why are we on the bus? I says, technically we're here as chaperones. We're here to help. And I says, but we are helping because if anyone needed any help, we're fine. But there's so many people, it's not a problem. I'm going to walk up and down the aisle and just see if everyone's okay once they're on the bus. And have a word with a few people because we know a few people, etc. So I did that once we're off, and just to show a bit of willing in that, and fine. So when we sat down, of course, by now my dad's like, this ain't right. But when we get to West Ham, he's like, okay, yeah, fine. It's a little bit of a story there. But anyway, we pull up outside the ground, and we're playing away at West Ham. We've won the first game of the season. Can we make it back to back? Yeah, terrific strike at the end of a great movement, which sums up Leicester. And as you look through the season again, we spoke about the first game and it kind of ticked every box of Leicester early in the season, scoring lots of goals, creating lots of chances, being very loose at the back. And then you go to the second game of the season. And one of the first things with the team, first of all, it's the same team. Okay. So you got Andy King in the center. There's no N'Golo Kante. He came off the bench for the first two games. Vardy and Okazaki up front. But in that second game, the one thing you'd say that didn't happen in the first was that your new striker, Shinji Okazaki, didn't score. Now, we know overall in the season he didn't score many, he scored important goals.
Mm-hmm.
But second game of the season, you'd want that to happen. And it happened. And it was a really good goal. And I think it showed again all that Okazaki was about. A really robust player, would put his body on the line, and a full-blooded goal, had to bundle it in the back of the net. I think there on co-commentary was that. I think it sounded like Tony Cottee to me. So, of course, that would have been a little bit awkward for him. Obviously, a big West Ham fan and player, etc. And then you got the goal from Riyad Mahrez. And I think with Riyad Mahrez in that game, we saw the goal on the first day of the season. There's a couple of goals he scored. Great delivery as well for one, but also getting on the end of another and being really good at home. But I think we saw here the quality. Now, he showed it in flashes in the first season in the Premier League, but all of a sudden now, there's a player whose shoulders are just growing and growing, and it's like, hang on, we've got an absolute star here. And from my memory, Leicester were just sensational, shooting away from where we were in the away end in the first half. Second half, they came back, scored, and then we hung on slightly towards the end, to be honest. I think they went down to 10 men. But from memory, in the first half, we were great. And Mahrez just ran the show. And it was a little bit of what's to come with him.
Yeah. And I mean, Okazaki's, I think most Leicester fans, unless they were even more nerdy than we are, wouldn't have known who Okazaki was. And again, it's just, you think about the things that have gone wrong since, say, gone wrong. We've had an amazing 10 years. You know, you take us going down to League Two for what we've had for the last 10 years. Obviously, losing Steve Walsh is a massive part of that. So he's another great find. And again, you've seen all Brighton's setting goals up there. And I think you're right with Mahrez. He came in, obviously, he was a complete unknown, 350 grand from French second division. But already he looks like one of the best players in the world in these first two games. And obviously, within 4 years, he's a treble winner.
I mean, it was the fact that also with Mahrez, I think the one thing with Mahrez in this game, and I've been thinking about this game quite a lot because obviously I was there in the away end, and it was the way that the opposition all of a sudden, as soon as he got the ball, they backed off. They knew it wasn't people coming at him and then him skipping by him. They knew that, hang on, this is a dangerous player. And with Okazaki, I think you're completely right in what you're saying about signings at the current time. We're looking for that kind of Okazaki kind of signing because we're not going to be signing household names. Okay, I think we've done really well in 2 of the 3 players we signed in the transfer window just now. And then obviously we don't know how Carranza will get it. That will be. He might be an Okazaki. Who knows? But Okazaki was, yes, we know we could look back on his career and say, you know, he's a Japanese international and he looked a very solid player. But how is this guy going to react towards the end of his career in the Premier League? You know, he wasn't a young man at the time. But it just works. He was exactly the foil we needed for Vardy, and just the amount of work he got through, and the ability to win the ball back and to shield the ball, to get fouled in a Jordan Ayew way. It's a great ability to have, and also to grab crucial goals, and we'll come on to those crucial goals eventually.
Well, if you wanted to have 2 strikers, if you wanted, because I mean, we mainly in that season played low blocks, mid blocks, soak it up, counter attack. But if you wanted to switch to a high press, and you couldn't really ask for 2 better strikers to do that than Okazaki and Vardy, just in terms of their work rate, how determined they were. And I mean, yeah, I mean, Vardy gets 24 league goals that year, but we don't win the league without Okazaki and Ujoa, however you say his name properly.
Well, exactly. Leo Ojoa, who I was talking to earlier, actually talking to my dad, actually, about Leo Ojoa. About
You weren't talking
later on
to Ojoa.
I wasn't talking to Leo Ojoa. I wish I was, but I was talking to my dad about him, about the goal. Again, we'll come on to in later episodes when we played Norwich at home, and it was the Vardy Quake goal, as everyone called it, even though it was Ojoa who scored it, but it kind of got in the press, we use Vardy. But when you look at the balance of the side, we were saying how well the side was balanced. When you got the likes of Leo Ojoa to come on, a different striker to Jamie Vardy, again, what do you need? You've got that option if you need it. For someone in the centre, you've got the likes of Gökhan Inler if you want to, and then eventually N'Golo Kante obviously cemented his place in there. If you want another centre half, you've got Johan Balaluan. If you want a bit of experience, you've got Christian Fuchs as well to come in. And you all of a sudden, after a couple of games, you're looking at the side going, actually, this squad is actually really quite well balanced. You know, we've got something for everyone. If we need a larger striker, we've got it. If we need a bit of grit and height in midfield, we actually have it, and experience. And if we need to bring on another centre half, which I think Johan Balaluan may have come on in this game, actually, Oh, Gökhan Inler came on. I think Beloan did, and
Yeah, Belaban
to
did.
play
Yeah,
at the back, yeah, and to play at the back. I can remember the lights shining off his bald head at Upton Park, and to play almost in the back three late on, we have that, and all of a sudden it becomes quite a good squad and a balanced squad. But of course, James, times moves on, and we're going to cover our first few months here. And then we fast forward and we play Tottenham. And I suppose the next question to ask, James, is we've beaten Sunderland at home. We've gone away to West Ham and won. And now we play Tottenham. So all of a sudden, the opposition level has gone a little bit higher. And
this was a good
what
Tottenham
we were,
team.
it was a very good Tottenham team. I'll give you the Tottenham side, actually. Hugo Lloris in goal. You got Davis, Vertonghen, Alderweireld, and Walker. So that's a very good back line. Ryan Mason, Eric Dyer, who was just in midfield at the time, Dembele, Lamela, Chadley, and Harry Kane. They had the likes of Dele Alli, who came on, Bentaleb, they had Rose, etc., Trippier. So it was of course, Mauricio Pochettino as the manager. So this was a good Spurs side, who ultimately, obviously, were the main challenges as we get towards the end of the season.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Spurs, I remember this game. They took the lead late on. It was a very close game, very tight game. Nothing really happened. Dele Alli came on and scored with about 10 minutes to go. Let me just check that. Oh, 9 minutes to go. Not bad.
And then, Mahrez straight
Still there.
away.
I've not completely gone mad, but there we go. I've still got I've got the full collection of programs as well. I should have got them out actually, because I've got my commentary notes on them as you go through the game, which I'll hold them up on the next episode. And then what we were talking about against West Ham, it was Mr. Mahrez. And Mr. Mahrez, of course, he had that bit of skill. He had that trickery. He had the ability to do something out of nothing. And
Well,
again,
Mahrez is an amazing player in many ways because he only really did one thing when he had the ball, which was
cut in.
feint and then to cut in. And everybody knew what he was going to do, but they couldn't stop him because that's how good
and that's
he
the
was.
definition of a player.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just amazing.
It's what you had with Gareth Bale. It's what you had with, obviously, Mahrez. It's what you have with Yamal now over at Barcelona. You know exactly what you're going to do. Iron Robin, someone like that. You know exactly what they're going to do. And guess who did it in this game? A ripper from Riyad Mahrez. How about that? And it was a sensational goal. And I've been talking about Riyad Mahrez. I'm going to find the player's name. I can't remember what his name is. I'm going to find the player's name because I'd said for Watford, I saw a player against Southampton. And he reminded me of Riyad Mahrez in a way. Iran Kunda, because when Riyad Mahrez came off the bench for Leicester to make his debut, he was the best player that I've ever seen without knowing a single thing about him. And in this world now, you tend to know about most players that you sign. Fully enough, Carranza, our new centre forward, he could be that, because I've never seen him play. I don't believe you've ever seen him play. I don't think anyone really has seen him play. So when he comes on, he is that hidden player. But the thing is, now we kind of know about him because he has played for Feyenoord, and also because he's played so often in MLS, there is quite a lot of footage. But with Mahrez, it was really unknown. We were in the Championship at the time, and when he came on, again, he came on to replace our best player in Anthony Knockout. Like, he was our best player. He was the crowd favourite. And we brought a player on, and straight away, after 5 minutes, you're going, we've replaced our best player with a player who we didn't know about, and he's better. Like, straight away, this skinny lad has come on the pitch who could like fall down in a decent gust of wind, and you're like, he is better. And with this Iran Kunda for Watford, I've never heard of him in my life. And I did the game against Southampton the other day, and I am not being funny. This kid is sensational. And I said he's the best unknown player that I've ever seen since Riyad Mahrez. N'Golo Kante, we knew about him because guess what? He's coming off the bench all the time. So we knew he was a good player. And N'Golo Kante is going to come up in conversation in a very short time. But Riyad Mahrez, of course, he's the star of the show at the moment. He equalised against Tottenham. And of course, James, that means that we're unbeaten in the Premier League. So we drew 1-1 against Tottenham. We then fast forward, because then we play Bury in the second round of the Cup and we win 4-1. We'll pass over that. And then we'll come on to Bournemouth. And this is a very important game for me, James, because we draw 1-1. It's arguably, I think it's arguably the most forgettable game in this season. Because if I said to you, name a game in the championship winning season, out there, watching on YouTube, watching on X, Twitter, I still want to call it, or Facebook, or listening, think of a game in the 2015-2016 season. Think of another game, okay? Now think of a third game. You might come up with the Arsenal game when we lost. You might come up with the Everton game to lift the trophy. You might come up with the game against Manchester United. You might even think of Chelsea against Tottenham. But you won't think of Bournemouth 1, Leicester City 1 on the 29th of August 2015, will you? Callum Wilson, for the record, scored after 24 minutes, and then Jamie Vardy with a late penalty. And this could well be the game that started the
Yeah, I was
Vardy
just about
run.
to say that, yeah.
So that's not what I'm going to get at, James. The one thing I'm going to get at is the starting lineup. Schmeichel in goal. Schlupp, Morgan, Huth, De Laet, the back line as we knew it at then. Danny Drinkwater, slightly anchoring. Then you had Albrighton, Kante, Mahrez, King, and then Vardy. Now, that's the way it's been put out in front of me here in a 4-1-4-1, but it wasn't. It was not that formation. We had Albrighton on one side, and on the other side, we had N'Golo Kante on the wing. And then we had in the middle the same two players, King and Drinkwater, who had started the season. Why wouldn't you? So essentially, we didn't have Riyad Mahrez. We didn't have Shinji Okazaki. So to combat Shinji Okazaki not being there, they played N'Golo Kante on the wing and just made it a bit more solid in midfield. Why would you put N'Golo Kante on the wing, James? Well, it's because we've never really seen him. He's come off the bench and he'd obviously looked very sharp. He'd looked very quick. And they put him on the wing. And I believe in this game, and I watched this game, and I want to know about you now, James. Where were you now? Were you watching games on TV? Were you going to the games? Or how were you feeling at this stage of the season? Because I'll come on to a bit of a story with this game.
Well, I didn't go to any games that season or for many years when I lived in Bath. I went for many years without going to any Leicester City games. Yeah, it's big, isn't it? And the National Express doesn't sound quite as nice as the disability coach that you were on.
Honestly, spotless.
I would have been watching games on my laptop. I'm not going to incriminate myself, but you can probably work out how I was doing that.
Hang on. You're not going to incriminate yourself. I've just told a story about technically sneaking onto a disabled bus and lying to my father about it.
I think, obviously, at this point, we're, 4 games into the season, so 8 points from 12. You know, Ranieri's thing he said all season, 40 points, 40 points. That's what we would have been thinking at this point. Thinking, yeah, we're 8 points in. But it's also thinking about adding it to last season. So 7 in 9 from the last games. You then we're unbeaten in 15 games in the Premier League.
But we're not thinking about anything like top half, are we? We're not.
No, it's all about survival at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And but this game, I watched this. This was live on telly. I think it was an early kickoff. And I went to the local pub that had it on down in Loughborough, actually. I watched it in the Beacon. So if you know Loughborough, it was in the Beacon. And they had it on a screen. It's a pub. I don't go in because it's in Loughborough. I'm Shepshed. So, but we went in there and because they had it on how they had it shown, don't know. Different owners now, don't matter. But they had it shown on TV. There you go. What are you going to do? But it was Kante and he played on the wing. And at some point in the game, he definitely moved inside because it wasn't great from Kante out wide. And they moved him inside. And all of a sudden, I mean, Mahrez goes off, actually. So you got substitutes are Shinji Okazaki. I don't quite know where he didn't start. Johan Belleloam, who must have come on for Richie De Laet. And a certain Joe Dudu comes on. There you go.
What a name.
There you go. For hat-trick fans. But there we go. And N'Golo Kante then moves into the middle. And during that game, I remember vividly this large room of people, large room of Leicester fans, kind of calling Kante, oh, he's not very good, is he? He's out wide. He's not really beating a man. Imagine N'Golo Kante trying to skin someone. Ain't going to happen. And so we've bought a duff, but we're going really well. It doesn't really matter. And then all of a sudden, they move him inside and he gets stuck in. Go on, my son, get stuck in. Da-da-da-da-da. And all of a sudden, you're like, hang on, we've got a bit of a player here in the middle of the park. And that's where I think the season makes a real turn. So for saying it's one of the most forgettable games of football, really, a 1-1 draw away at
Kante's
Bournemouth.
first start.
It was Kante's first start, but also it was the game where eventually he moved into the middle. And then, and this will be the last clip that we're going to play, but I think it's a very important clip because we go to play at home against Aston Villa. Now, we will eventually finish September with the game against Arsenal, which I think was the kind of the final real game that we decided to play with the two fullbacks. And it was the decision maker eventually about changing the two fullbacks round. The game after that actually was Norwich away 2-1, which I seem to think Jeff Schlupp actually scored in. But this game, of course, because we're talking about the squad being very well balanced, there's one player who we haven't mentioned so far, who we signed on loan, and also hasn't come onto the field of play, I believe, as yet. Hasn't really figured in the squad. I think we maybe even signed probably just before that game, who had a massive impact on the season because he gets the winner, famously against Aston Villa. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic, weren't it? And it was, of course, a header from well, what turned out to be not an unknown player because he had a great.
I'd forgotten we'd signed him.
He had a great time when he was at Swansea, and of course he scored goals in the cup final as well. But overall, I think when they won the League Cup, didn't they beat Hull or someone in the final? But and he scored a few. But I think he might have got a brace. But Nathan Dyer, little lad, comes on and scores a header. Nearly gets knocked out as well. I think he did get knocked out for a few seconds. But you heard there in commentary as well. This is Leicester written all over. You know, it is the Leicester of that we know. We saw Mahrez there driving forward straight through players after doing the Cruyff turn. Vardy getting on the end of a ball into the penalty area. We saw
Drinkwater.
From Drinkwater.
You forget how good he was.
And then also you saw just on the inside of Mahrez, N'Golo Kante in the centre, finding space and being that midfield dynamo that we know. I mean, it's not even a dynamo; it's a power station. He was absolutely everywhere. And the old adage of why did Leicester win? Well, Kante. Who did Drinkwater play? Well, to one side it was Kante, and the other side it was Kante. He's now in the centre. And yes, we were behind by a couple of goals, a couple of really good goals. Jack Grealish scored in the first half. I think it was a really good strike. And then Carlos Gil scored. And it was a really, really good goal. So we were 2-0 down to Villa, but then came back to win. And I think this was the game for me, because I remember being there. I remember being the commentator in the game, and Rob as well was there. And I think this was the first game that, even though we'd come from behind to draw against Tottenham, even though we've had success at the end of the season before, and I've gone to the game at West Ham, but I think this was the first game that I really went, we are a proper team. Mahrez out wide, just sensational. We've got a guy in our midfield in N'Golo Kante who looks absolutely mustard, so quick, but also we know about his tackling, his reading the game, etc. And all of a sudden, this is the first game that we actually have that side. Not at the start of the game, because we got Schmeichel, De Laet, Huth, Morgan, Schlupp, Mahrez, Albrighton, either side of a Gökhan Inler who starts, and Drinkwater, Okazaki and Vardy. But then, of course, you take off Gökhan Inler, you bring on N'Golo Kante. So there you've got virtually the team, apart from the fullbacks, okay, which we know will be Simpson and will be eventually Christian Fuchs. But you've got, for that 20 minutes, once those changes happened, you've got the side which then really kicked on. Dyer comes on. Of course, Ajoa comes on. We saw on that clip, he pulled out wide before the cross from Drinkwater. But we had all of a sudden that side, and it kicked into overdrive. And the formula was there for Leicester to go forward, apart from the fullbacks that we'll come on to. And that was the first time that I think I sat there and went, not that we're going to win the league,
Yeah.
or not that we're going to qualify for Europe, none of that nonsense, but we really do have something special here.
Well, I think it was interesting. There's Martin Tyler doing that commentary in the clip we just watched, and that must be one of the first times because he said Leicester just refused to be beaten, which would eventually morph into Fearless Foxes, which is of course the title of Jonathan Northcroft's book about the season. So I imagine that must be one of the first times that idea, Foxes never quit, Foxes never die, was kind of expressed. I mean, you see little clips of Kante running there, just amazing. Just how much he moves his legs, and Drinkwater's little pass into Vardy to score. And yeah, I think it can be quite easy to forget now how good Drinkwater was, because he basically stopped playing football in about 2018. But he could have gone on to be one of. He'll always be a legend of Leicester because he's part of that team, obviously. But if he'd have stayed and he hadn't gone to Chelsea, he would have become a proper legend of the club, I think. So yeah, but it probably is the game when you kind of are charting the history and the narrative of the story of the season, to come back to win with 20 minutes to go, last minute. Yeah, this is with the biggest turning point being the Arsenal game that we lost, which is coming up next. I think this is definitely a big part of the story in terms of this idea of Foxes never quit. I think probably starts here.
Yeah, we go to Stoke and we draw 2-2, Mahrez with a penalty and Vardy. And I think that's the epitome of kind of a Leicester never say die. Like you said, Foxes never quit. Again, it's that we're 2-0 down. And of course, Vardy's still scoring. He scored against Aston Villa. He scores here against Stoke. Okay. And it's now gone from, again, I really got kind of jiggy against Aston Villa. It's like, we've got something really special here. What we're going to do, I don't know. Stoke, we're 2-0 down against a good Stoke side, and then we come back and draw. And it's almost now, it's a bit of a laugh. It's like Vardy scores. He scored again. Okay, 3 games on the bounce. Brilliant. Mahrez with a penalty. And it is now that never say die. Foxes never quit. Doesn't matter whether we're 2 goals down. We've been 2 goals down now in 2 Premier League games on the bounce. We come back to beat Aston Villa, and we come back to draw away at Stoke. And it's just a great season.
And it must be around this time that the Ranieri saying they'll get a pizza if we keep a clean sheet must have been starting around here as well, I imagine.
It could well be, because the clean sheet comes a long time into the future, a long time. When we were commentating at the King Power Stadium, technically we couldn't go into the press conferences, but that was technically, of course you can go if you sit there and be quiet and just to watch. The one which we'll come on to in another episode was the last game for Jose Mourinho. And it was the one time in a press conference that I got my phone out and took a couple of pictures, because I sat there looking at Jose going, you're gone. He was gone. His face was gone. I put the pictures on actually when we do the episode regarding that game, because that was December, I think. But anyway,
yeah, December.
We'll come on to that in December. So we've drawn away at Stoke, and then we play West Ham at home in the 3rd round of the League Cup, and we win by 2-1. And Joe Dudu and Andy King in extra time, with obviously a very changed side. But again, that's a game that don't really need to delve into. And then we play Arsenal. Okay, we won't show any goals in this game because maybe a few copyright infringements, but there you go. But also we might, if you're watching the live stream, I think it's been interrupted a few times on YouTube because of that. So we might just knock that on the head when it comes to the future episodes. I thought I'd give it a bit of a go and see how it went. But
right, okay.
Yeah. Between friends, what we're going to do. But yeah, we may have been slightly stumped on that, but we'll figure that out next time. But we come on to the game against Arsenal. Now, I still say I've not maybe clarified this statement and used the last 5 or 6 seasons. I don't know. But I still say, oh, why not? It was my favourite Leicester defeat, if that makes any sense. So
I know exactly what you mean.
We play at home against. We're talking 26th of September, so we're coming up to the end of the episode. Vardy scores after 13 minutes, scores in the 89th minute, but in between at that, Theo Walcott, Sanchez scores a hat trick, and then Giroud late on. We have the Leicester team as we kind of think about it again without the fullbacks. So Schlupp and De Laet are still there, but the rest: Schmeichel, Huth, Morgan, Mahrez, Kante, Drinkwater, Albrighton, Okazaki, and Vardy. That's the team. But when I say it's my favourite game, it was just an unbelievable game, live on telly. I think it was really warm as well.
Yes.
And Leicester were brilliant, but Arsenal were great. I mean, their team, checking goal, Monreal, Koscielny, Mertesacker, Berlin, and of course they were finished second. Santi Cazorla, Flamini, Sanchez, Ozil, Ramsey, and Walcott. So there's a fair bit of attacking talent in that side, and those kind of like tricky players that can. I mean, talk about threading the through ball: Ramsey, Ozil, Cazorla, and Sanchez. For Walcott,
it's easy to forget how good Cazorla was as well.
And
he was an amazing player.
All you have to put is Theo Walcott on our big men at the back and say, right, put a through ball through, and who's going to win a
who's winning a race out of Theo Walcott and Wes Morgan? I'm not sure. It's difficult to say.
It was my favourite game because I remember walking out of the stadium and just going, that was an amazing game of football. The run had come to an end. We've been beaten in the league for the first time since year dot. But it doesn't matter because we've lost to a really good Arsenal side who were very, very good on the day. And we gave them a right game. It was never a 5-2. It was never a 5-2. It was a 3-2, maybe 4. It was never a 5-2 game. But Leicester were brilliant. And you came out of that game going, I've just seen a brilliant game of football, some fantastic goals. But we lost. And that run, that unbeaten run, and also you're drawing away at. I think the Stoke game was the one which just clung on at the end, and it was almost now we've lost. The team can almost breathe, and I think that's what kind of happened. They could breathe and go, right. We don't have that monkey on our back now. We don't have the unbeaten tag that we kind of claw onto and cling onto, and it maybe cost us in games for the win. But in terms of drawing games, it's fine. But it can maybe hamper a team somewhat, some kind of record like that. That's why if you get teams who go unbeaten or go on long unbeaten runs, there tends to be towards the end a fair few draws. But we lost in great style. So there was no shame in losing to Arsenal. And again, walking out that game, I felt really, really happy. The unbeaten run had come to an end. We're playing some great football. We're still scoring goals. Vardy scored again. And I don't still think that the run had really kind of clicked into gear yet. I don't think people had really cottoned onto that as yet. I think if it was now, maybe some people would be having a word because it was a slightly unknown record before, obviously, this season with Vardy mainly. I think if you ask people before this season who holds that record, I think many people say Ruud van Nistelrooy. I think next time when we play Norwich, and that's when we get into the stage where Vardy scored again. Vardy scored again. And of course, penalties ended up being changed, like you said, from Mahrez to Vardy as well. But do you remember this Arsenal game, James?
I do. Because we played with a lot of confidence, playing gung-ho. It wasn't a battering. They didn't absolutely batter us. It wasn't like when Man City would win 5-2 and they've got 75% possession and the other team have not got a look in and somehow looked 2 goals. We played really well. I think there's a couple of interesting things come out of that. Is that Vardy, you've got obviously the 11 in a row, but you've also got the start of his amazing record against top 6 teams just starting to form. Because obviously he scored that goal. He scored against Arsenal the previous season and Manchester United. So you've got that about how good he is against the biggest teams. I think Kante starting with Drinkwater for that midfield 4 playing is obviously a massive part of the season and of the title win. I do really remember when he said it was hot. It was incredibly sunny. I remember from that day.
And they had a
And
gold shirt, didn't they?
yeah, they did have a gold shirt, yeah. And there was definitely a sense from like the media, which was like, "Oh, Leicester are back down to earth now. The fun's over. Here we are. They're back to reality." But in kind of actuality, this is where the kind of fantasy really starts, because it's from this game that he changes De Laet and Schlupp. Really, this is the reason why he does it, and then that's what takes us into the fantasy of winning the league. So I think that's a really interesting contrast. That the thought was, oh, this is it now, they're back to reality, but we weren't. It's the
And it was
start of the
almost
fantasy.
absolutely, and it was almost a turning point for the manager as well. I mentioned about, I mean, you're absolutely bang on with it. Was the last game that we had those two at fullback. Christian Fuchs and Danny Simpson started against Norwich. But as I mentioned about that unbeaten run, it was almost like, and I think it has to be true that probably Claudio thought, I can't change things really because we are drawing games, we are unbeaten, and then it all of a sudden we lose. Right, now I can do what I always wanted to do. I've carried on what happened last season. I've played Richie De Laet. I've played Jeff Schlupp. I probably didn't want to. Okay, and I'm speaking as Claudio now. I probably didn't want to, but I will do this until we lose, and then I can change to the system that I want, and I can do that on the back of a defeat because everyone will accept that. But the defeat never came until the back end of September. So
Well, do you
now I
remember when he
can make the
came in and there
changes.
was all this thing about the players were scared of his tactics? The players were a bit scared that he was going to bring on all these tactics in. And Ranieri actually came out and said, "Oh no, I'm not going to. I want them to carry on from last season. I'm not going to impose too much tactical information on them," because it was almost like this team couldn't handle the idea of tactics. And he definitely, had we lost the opening game, had we lost the first two games or whatever it might have been, he might have been a lot quicker to kind of impose kind of his style, which has always been 4-4-2, 4-3-3. He's never been the most attacking manager ever. But yeah, I agree in that you can't really change the team if you keep winning. You have to stick with it ultimately. But now the loss comes in and it's like, right, okay, now I can start telling them how to defend a bit better. Now I can start to impose my will a little bit more on the team. So yeah.
And I mentioned about the next game, which obviously does revolve into the next Champions Edition, but just a little prelude. I mentioned Jeff Schlupp scores in that next game. He actually just starts. There's only one different player in that side to the regular 11, and everyone who's associated with the football club can reel off the Leicester City 11 of the title-winning side. But Jeff Schlupp actually plays instead of Riyad Mahrez in that game. So that's the only change. So actually, he starts ahead of Christian Fuchs, and ultimately he scores. And I think with these episodes, James, I think it's those little nuggets. Now, obviously, I had the story about the disabled bus to West Ham, the gold shirt for Arsenal, the fact that it was a warm day. I've not thought about the fact that it was a really warm day for years. Jeff Schlupp, again, it's the game we'll come on to, but he scored a league goal in a Premier League winning season. So when you see Jeff Schlupp play at Leicester, like, he's a hero. Like, how much of a hero the
All the
likes
points
of
count.
Yeah, exactly. And loan signings who get knocked out. What a hero scoring that goal against Aston
Amazing.
Villa. Like, absolutely fantastic. The likes of Joe Dudu, like, coming onto the team. I didn't realize he played in it. Those aspects are very important because we look back as Leicester supporters and we've all got our own personal memories, and they will all explode as we get later on into that series. As we go through this season, we'll match this season with the title winning season. So we'll wait for a couple of months and then do another episode. But I think as we go further forward, I think the stories are just going to pour out of every orifice, and they'll be very personal. At the moment, we're just going through a bit of emotions, remembering who played when, what the games were like, what we can remember, like what I remembered watching it down the Beacon against Bournemouth and seeing Kante then move inside and go, whoa, hang on, we've got a player here. And I think as we go forward, we'll have a lot more memories come out, and I can't wait. I think it's going to be fantastic. What are you looking forward to as we go through towards the next episode of Champions 10 Years On, which again will be in a couple of months' time? Of course, we'll have the preview next week. We'll have FPL Pod, and we'll have, of course, the big show with Pete Selby with myself coming up on for Fox 8 weekly. Many episodes. Make sure you click subscribe on YouTube, and if you follow us on FFS Pod when it comes to Twitter or X and on Facebook, you can listen on Spotify, and also you can listen on Apple Podcasts as well and SoundCloud. But when it comes to Champions, it'll be a couple of episodes, a couple of months' time. What are you looking forward to, James? Is it those little stories from people?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I am looking forward to. When we get there, I will rewatch. I'm going to actually, as we go along, I'll try and rewatch as many games as possible. But I'm 100% going to rewatch the Man City game in full. I mean, that's the game when you go, oh, we are actually going to win the league. I'm looking forward. There's a game before. It wasn't at Christmas. I remember thinking, oh, we might actually finish in the top four. Like, there's a chance we could finish in the top four. So there's a game just before Christmas. So it might be the Chelsea. I mean, the Chelsea game as well. Mourinho, you're getting sacked in the morning. Him coming out saying the players betrayed him because he told them.
Can I whet your appetite? Can I whet your appetite for the next episode of Champions 10 Years On? Champions 10 Years On includes the game where we win away at Newcastle 3-0. So all of a sudden the Vardy run really continues, but also that's arguably one of the best Leicester performances of all time. One of the most complete performances. We were awesome that day. Awesome. And it also includes the 11, it's heaven, it's Jamie Vardy, etc. It includes the Manchester United game, which I still say is the loudest the King Power has ever been for a goal when that went in. I still say that's the loudest it's ever been. I remember the goal going in. Oh, was I on com for? Because you swapped over. You could swap over every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, 15 minutes, however you decided with your co-commentator at the time.
Right.
And I believe it might not have been me on commentary, and I took my headphones off, and maybe that was a bit of a. I still think it's the loudest the King Power's ever been for one goal, and it was that goal. Maybe people might say later on the Norwich goal, the Vardy quake, or you might think of Sevilla, etc. But I think that goal. But anyway, that's on the next episode of Champions. Okay, so stand by for that. And guess what? If you want to make sure you don't miss an episode, make sure you subscribe on YouTube. It's the best place to do it. Okay, James, final thoughts from the start of the Champions season.
Yeah, it's interesting looking back because I have forgotten so much about the start of the season. Completely forgot that Nathan Dyer scored that winner. For example, and when I saw the goal, I remember it in my head because he gets absolutely clattered. Like, that's a really bad, it's a really bad head blow. But yeah, it's going to be amazing because, I mean, and I've had this when I've interviewed Jonathan Wilson and Michael Cox in the past and said it to them that this is the greatest achievement in sporting history. And they agreed with me. So there you have it. Jonathan Wilson says.
Do you want a very, very quick Jonathan Wilson story? I think I and Jonathan Wilson saved each other's life at the 2022 World Cup because we get to a stadium. I'll dig out the stadium, and we couldn't find our way in, and we're at the wrong side of the stadium, and it was absolutely boiling hot. And Jonathan had been walking around the stadium about 9 times. I'd turned up in a taxi on a highway and just jumped out because you couldn't get anywhere near the stadium. And I bumped into him walking around, and he looked at me, and I went, "Oh, Jonathan Wilson." And he goes, "I'm really in trouble. I've walked around the ground about 6 times. I need some water." So not only do I say, "Well, I think you go in this entrance here," and we walk around, and that was the way in. And he sits down, he goes, "I think you've saved my life." And I was boiling hot as well. So
imagine.
It was. But anyway, that by and by. But I'm I look back at those games and you just remember those things, you know. And I think for me, I always say about the Arsenal game, it's the best I've ever felt on a Leicester defeat. But I think the one thing that I remember now, I've been down the Beacon, but also I remember how well I felt after that Villa game, because it wasn't just the coming back from 2 down to win 3-2, which is great against Villa as well. But also, I think it was just all of a sudden Kante in the middle, and it was like, this is it. We've got a proper good side here, and it's just going to be a fantastic season. And it was. And it's great to have your company, James. And it's great to have your company listening, watching to the podcast. Make sure you subscribe. We've been saying that, banging about that all night. We're going to have another Champions episode in a couple of months' time, maybe a bit less than that, talking all things October and November. As we go through this season with Leicester City, hopefully being champions in the Championship, we're going to be going through the 2015-16 season, the best season of all time to do with any sports, any club, whatever. It's Leicester winning the Premier League. So from myself, Pete Selby, and from James, have a great evening. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll be back with the big show and the preview in the week.